Good morning, everyone. This is Pattern a Day. I'm David Getson, and we are up to number 3, City, Country, Fingers. And this pattern is something that people have been discussing lately. Steve Mouzon on Twitter has been mentioning this several times about how having such a sharp division between city and country, where you're either in one place or the other, and each is kind of far away from the other, it tends to drain everything of energy. But how could we ever fix this kind of thing? Well, one way, there are some traditional urban fabrics where this has come out in a nice way, once again because of the way that geography works. You know, when I was I was living in Piano di Sorrento, working in Sorrento, teaching design courses, working for architect Alessandro Fiorentino, and the way that worked in that landscape is anywhere that you would walk. If you would walk in a given direction, you could walk in one direction and be in a city for miles and miles, but you could walk up into the mountains, and within about pretty much from wherever you were, because this is on the Sorrentine Peninsula, if you walk towards the hills, you would be among lemons and fennel, and you would be seeing the pergolas, and you would be in countryside with cows and barns with cats on top of the roof next to the cows. And this is 10 minutes of walking, maybe. Maybe 20, but anyway, you could get there very quickly. Steve talks about how this frames views into the countryside and how that's very important. The difficulty with this is how to make that work economically. One of the saddest things about LA County is what happened to the orange groves and what happens to everything in San Fernando Valley. There's a street around here, and this is still a very nice place in Pasadena, in South Pasadena. There's a street called Orange Grove Boulevard, and I sometimes think to myself, where's the orange grove? It's not, where did it used to be? Maybe it used to be up in the hills, which is down that way, instead of up around the flats, which would be that way. But let's get into the pattern itself here. So we can just read the heart of it. Patterns go from large, as Frank Lloyd Wright said, work from generals to particulars. As you can tell, we're getting more finely grained as we will eventually get to things in your life. It's not a spoiler. That's the final pattern. So with Pattern a Day, we'll get there about March of next year. Continuous, sprawling urbanization destroys life and makes cities unbearable, but the sheer size of cities is also valuable and potent. Therefore, keep interlocking fingers of farmland and urban land even at the center of the metropolis. The urban fingers should never be more than 1 mile wide, while the farmland fingers should never be less than 1 mile wide. It's a very interesting idea, kind of in a cosmetic sense. Now, none of these patterns were pulled out of nowhere. People like Frederick Law Olmsted, also Frank Lloyd Wright. Wright was admiring Olmsted. The only city, Wright had what they called polyphobia. It's one of the several things that I disagree with him on, is that Frank Lloyd Wright didn't love cities as such so much. The only city that he'd really say anything good about was Chicago. I can understand why. And the only reason that he thought it was good was because of the parkway system, is that you could drive around in an open-top car, or he would be driven, waving his cane around, pointing at things. And you could drive around in the country, drive around and feel as if he was in the countryside. That's what he said. Boston has something similar, which is also Olmsted, although I can't remember if it's Olmsted or Burnham. that thought of the parkway system in Chicago. They never really fully built it out the way that it was expected, but it's pretty good. Boston has what's called the Emerald Necklace, which is a tremendous, beautiful achievement, which gets close to what Christopher Alexander was talking about. And that's Frederick Law Olmsted was the main designer of that, this famous guy who did Central Park. When I lived in Boston, Franklin Park now has a golf course. Some people might think that's ridiculous and stupid, but really, there are much worse things than a golf course to use for a perfectly enormous public park. And a lot of people just don't play golf there. You can walk around. I would do that. You walk around. I never played golf there, but I walked through it and just enjoyed that it's a really nice place to walk. And there's a zoo next to it, the Franklin Park Zoo, where you'd hear lions roar at the setting sun. And I thought to myself, out of all the places in the earth where there's, how many places on earth is there a green golf course where you will hear lions roar at the sun next to it? You know, probably only Kenya and South Africa, right? It's very few. It's a very special thing that Boston is able to have there. I think that what I would love to see happen in the future, and this is one of the great things about pattern language, is that these aren't pieces to be assembled. These are frameworks to be adapted, that you pull from them. This is the object-oriented nature of it. You pull from the frameworks to implement your method. So these are software metaphors, and you adapt it. The pattern language is meant to be, it's called a pattern language, not the pattern language, but the book A pattern language is meant to be criticized and modified. I believe they even said so in the introduction, which nobody reads. So each project develops its pattern language, mostly from scratch. I've never pulled, I mean, there are some things like, which we'll get to later, about how you treat windows and houses that end up being just such good ideas that it touches on that, yeah, you end up using them. And it's useful to understand those. But you end up coming up with unique things, and I've done that with clients. So we're going to be really, I hope everyone continues to have fun. I'm enjoying doing this every day here, courtesy in this beautiful setting of Arroyo Outdoor, the location of the new office, arroyooutdoor.co, the website, to see what we do here for that part of the services. I always need to remember to bring tiles. Some suspense for next week, the tiles. And also, coming up as we move down the scales, we will get to agricultural valleys next time on Pattern a Day. Thank you for listening.